Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kathy from Nebraska. We are so excited to have you all here, online and in person joining this seminar. Investing in human capital, why D&I matters as a corporate agenda. Our topic of the day, diversity and inclusion, is not simply a human resource thing, but should be included in our modern day business planning. What for us here today is to discuss how do we embed D&I into our business and how do we drive company innovation, business excellence, as well as winning talents by infusing D&I into our organizations. As corporate leaders, many of you should be aware of the recent tectonic shift in the job market. Everyone is talking about how COVID has impacted our lives and how we should adapt to the new normal for employees. This global pandemic is a wake-up call to start questioning themselves about the purpose of their jobs. What really matters in their lives. Therefore, working is no longer just a tool for breadwinning, but more importantly, how a job could be fulfilled a much bigger goal. According to the statistics from the US Labor Bureau, there were 4.5 billion employees who quit their jobs last year. And according to McKinsey, with the new work model and the exploration of the work-life purpose, employees are even willing to leave a job without another opportunity secured. That's what they call the Great Resignation. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of it, or you're experiencing it in your organizations. And exactly because of these reasons. The Great Resignation has become the top of mind for many leaders across the world. In the field of enterprise learning, we have been connecting and communicating with different people leaders to understand their needs. We have observed that it's not a challenge for people teams anymore, but we should be asking ourselves, why would talented individuals would like to work in our companies? Without a culture that fosters a climate of trust, integrity, or inclusion. We should put ESG in the agenda of business meetings as well as boardroom discussions. Now, diversity and inclusion is upfront to every corporate, and it is a must-have key performance indicator of your business. I know many of you come here today to understand, to explore how to make it as a business plan and practical and implement it practically. Today, we feel very honored to have invited various thought leaders from different industries to share their best practice. How do they educate D&I to make the business success? How do they unlock D&I and prioritize as a business plan? Before we start our panel discussion, may I invite our Deputy GM China, John Dan, to share a welcome speech for us. John, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you each and one of you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us here today. And a special big thank you to our guest speakers, our panelists, Mr. KK Fung from JLL, Fern Ngai, D&I Specialist in the Cubic Support Group, David Simmonds from CLP, and Serena Mak from UBS. We truly appreciate everyone's interest in our events, Investing in Human Capital by D&I Matters as Corporate Agenda. It's an initiative that we at Dun & Bradstreet are extremely proud and grateful to be able to host. Conversation about diversity and inclusion touches on every aspect of our lives, not just our corporate lives. It's incredibly important and it must be treated with respect, empathy, and most importantly, practical action. So rest assured, I won't be making any bar jokes today. You know that may know Dun & Bradstreet as a CCRA, as an NYSE listed company, major data services provider for 90% of the Fortune 500. But what you might not know is that we're a very strong believer in things like empowering women. 65% of our Asia Pacific workforce are women, 64%, 65% in Hong Kong. And we're not just talking about admin and operational positions. More than half of our people leaders, people who have direct reports, are female employees. We're considered a best place to work for the LGBTQ equality by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. We're considered a best place to work for disability inclusion by the Disability Equality Index. We have massive multicultural diversity across all of our key markets, North America, Europe, Asia. And we're very, very proud because our diversity has never negatively impacted our productivity and efficacy. In fact, it is the different perspectives and awareness that contributes to our success. So, what does D&I mean to me? Maybe I'll just quickly share a past experience that's had a pretty deep and profound impact on me. So many moons ago, in the good old MBA days, I went on an exchange program to Tel Aviv in Israel to learn about the apparently flourishing startup, venture, tech, and R&D community. I've forgotten most of the names of the company I visited there, except for one that really stood out to me. It wasn't that electric grid company that went bust, and it wasn't any of the ex-military turned Silicon Valley companies. It's actually just a ordinary SME call center. Didn't have any fancy tech, didn't have AI, didn't have big data or any of the buzzwords. It was called Paul Nicole, if I pronounced that right. And it operated like each other call center. It had KPIs, it had very high levels of customer service. Its major clients were banks and insurance companies. And their employees fielded questions, queries, complaints, and occasionally compliments from all their customers. So it's quite a funny game, you might say. And some of you who are more fluent in Middle Eastern linguistics will realize that it's actually a pretty good pun in Hebrew. Call in your call literally means you can do all things. Your call means can do. And what was special about this company was that this company was the single largest employer of people with special needs in the Israeli market. That's a direct quote from the website. And it makes me very happy that whereas so many startups all over the world have blown up or disappeared into oblivion in the past years, this one remains strong, operating since 2008. And the concept is so simple. The website reads, Call Your Call provides a safe working environment carefully designed to physically and emotionally support special needs employees, such as larger parking spaces to accommodate wheelchair-bound drivers, custom positioning of the main entrance for wheelchair entry, wider elevators, extra spaces kitchen, comfortable seating, workspaces with unique features that cater for visually impaired, and many other accommodations. So that's kind of what they publicly state. But a more personal chat with its founder shed a much more profound light on the key to its success. And I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to call it normality. So normal is quite a dangerous word. It can be easily misconstrued into insinuating negative connotations, or it can be a word to divide people, normal and abnormal. So I'm going to tread very carefully here. Because what I want to share is a much more simpler and innocent meaning of the word normal or normality. It's about acceptance, it's about inclusion, it's about not treating anybody differently or abnormally. The founder shared that the key driver for its success was that its employees, all of whom were handy capable to various degrees of autonomy, are probably treated differently every day of their lives, on the streets, every time they commute, every time they talk to someone. However, in the call center, in the working environment, this different treatment, this abnormality in interactions does not exist. They were included, they were the norm, in the sense that their physical capabilities were simply not a factor in who they were or what they could achieve. They were treated just like any other employee, any other business. They have normal KPIs, normal targets, expected levels of service, performance conversations with their bosses, and even normal management structures. They have the same professional respect as well as the same tough customers asking tough questions to themselves as customer service reps. Yes, call centers are pretty tough jobs. So what I want to emphasize here is that the entire dimension of physical handicapability, the special needs and accessibility needs, were completely taken out of the picture. It is irrelevant. It's simply not a factor of their performance and their contribution to Call Your Call, a normal, for-profit business. The practical action was that this business provided all the fit-outs, the ramps, the special desks, whatever else was required at zero cost to the employees. fully empowering each employee to perform to their own merit, to their own capabilities, in the same way that any other call centre anywhere in the world would expect their employees to perform. This levels the playing field. There's no difference, there's no abnormality, and it was very simple, so empowering. So what does D&I mean to me? It's not just a mere slogan, it's not just a buzzword that corporates use to sound good on their websites or try to differentiate themselves, we're not like the other companies, but it's treating people with dignity and worth and equality and normality, the same way that culture treats its employees. So I've talked about one aspect, but there are so many other aspects of diversity and inclusion, such as gender, such as orientation, such as race, culture, physical and other attributes that I'm probably not knowledgeable enough or not qualified enough to speak about. So I'll now defer to our learned panel, who will no doubt cover many of these areas with insight and depth and experience and understanding. So without further ado, let's welcome Michelle Mak, our moderator, up to present to us all of our esteemed speakers. And thank you once again, everyone, for your attendance today.
Thank you, John, for the wonderful speech. All of you who are here, today this topic is extremely important because many of you who know about D&D or myself, you know how much this topic matters to me. I have been running seminars for many years, but this one is the one that I feel the most nervous about. So this session is particularly want to keep myself dedicated to the panelists because I invite to show you with all my heart, and there's an idea why. If you actually, I mean, some of you probably look at it because I invited you personally, or you look at the profiles and say, hey, this is cool. This could be something that I can bring back to my industry or to my company. You have seen these panelists that are holding various titles, or holding large portfolios. I want to say that, again, as we first speak at the beginning, as Kathy said, this is not a HR agenda. The reason why we select these panelists for a reason, because we want to assure and confirm and tell you all that this is essential and has to start from the top level, from the top management. So I want to thank Katie specifically. I think I told you many times, I wrote to you very abruptly because I've seen you run this lunch and learn at JLL, fighting for special needs people, fighting for diversity and inclusion in person. I think action speaks louder than words, and that's why I wrote to you without the meeting in person, and the next day you wrote to me and say yes. The profile, if you want to see more, you can look at the EDM, I'm sure you've seen it, but I just want to give a personal touch how grateful I am to each of you. Fern, I have been a designer for many years. I actually was a volunteer in business for years. I was volunteering and helping the underprivileged kids. That conversation with you, and you have been helping and driving the corporate leaders to do the right thing. And even at this level, we don't have to do this, and you still influencing the corporate leaders to do the right thing. So I'm very touched, and I respect your long being that. Serena, of course, you know that we don't know each other for a long time. I honestly at the beginning, I think we need something in the financial sector, right? But then that conversation really struck me because she shared that along her career, how she drove financial inclusion and the people work around. Financial inclusion is one of the key elements for people who don't have the ability to even bank. We talk about digitization, but actually we're putting the underprivileged to an even worse situation. So I think you are very inspiring. Standing for banking industry, talking about financial inclusion is extremely manageable. So I really respect that. And then the last but not least, I have usually never the last, first the last. But I wrote you because you were speaking at the corporate governance conference. You are the chief strategy, sustainability and governance officer. You sat the board and not sat, you're still sitting at the board CLP. But you were advocating so much on D&I, and I think that is so important. Everything that we're trying to do here is to show people that D&I is not a side function, and don't shy away to give other parts. If you are leaders, you have to shoulder and say, what are we doing today? And I think it's extremely important that we invite you as we tell people in Hong Kong or other countries for this. There are actually other people who actually register their language here. That we have to we have to channel and use our power and influence the right way. So I think today is all set the scene that when we talk about D&I, we have all these buzzwords, LGBT and all that, race and we talk about age and all that, but we will stretch a little because we want to maximize, the experience here. I think it's one of our best advanced learning seminar we have had. So thanks, my lord, that give us the budget. So, and we have the wine as well. So this is something very important. So I think we have to maximize the conversation. We started our 30 minutes to set the scene and just sharing about, what each of us have been doing in our corporate experience. And then after 30 minutes, we have some wine and catering, just to make sure in case we need some boost and ask us some questions that you are facing in reality in your workplace. We want to seek advice from these thought leaders. I think it's extremely important. So don't be limited by D&I and ESG. Of course, we need to use it for to attract here. But when you are here or you are here online, we want to ask real questions because it could be the last seminar we hear you're here. But we want this to be just the beginning of the fight for D&I in the next year, 2020. Will that be your objective next year? Will that be your resolution to make an impact in your corporate? That's my question. So I hope you understand that our objective here is really hope that you can multiply the seats that you have and bring that to your workplace. These are all inspired by the conversation with Michelle. And do you guys need to join before we start? Otherwise the conversation is going to get so we start now. I speak in yeah, can we right? I know I have something that I forgot. I'm sorry, panelists, but let me see just 30 seconds. So in this event, I particularly want to thank my team, Kathy and Hank. Everything that is said here, we spent over a month, every single detail. I mean, there are a lot of tears and sweat and late nights. I just want to say that how grateful I am to you. And it means a lot to me. Thank you. And sorry about that. And so, it seems like you guys already need a drink for a while. So, is that? So I want to thank all of you to be here. We had a great conversation and a breakout room earlier. So of course we had the standard questions to start with to set the scene. So I think all of us wanted to know from us here that we're not just talking. So I think first question I want to ask is where are we now? So do you mind should you share a little bit what you have done in your corporate? The milestone you have that achieved in D&I perspective. Yeah, so please feel free to share. You can start first.
Oh, you're looking at me, so that's thank you, your question. So joining some questions. I really enjoyed our initial connection. I mean, it's a journey. I think anecdotally, we all, if we exclude agenda, 52% the population. For people with different stability, I think this statistic varies 20-25% for people with different stabilities. And LGBT, I think again, as how you survey it, it's about 20-30%. And if we exclude those anecdotally, we know this one. We know you are not getting the best resources for your industry. So we started a journey a long time ago, and it's not because I have 2 points in this particular question about it. But of course, we know this is what it is doing. In particular, in our real estate industry, it's still a very nailed dominant industry. I think go back to the days that you have to enjoy a few drinks to be part of the ranks before you get promotion. But equally, I mean, we can have a good conversation and build up a report over time. With people from different backgrounds. So that's how we started. And so we are alternative from and we will see working.
Thank you, take care, really appreciate it. I personally have seen all this and the inclusive, diverse and inclusive culture is, and, thank you, and later you can share. And, any speaker would like to share? David?
John, thank you. Well, one of the things that really, and this is something that annoys me about this topic, because a lot of people come at this topic as a buzzword or as an organization approach and as something very interesting for us and that's something difficult to do it. And that just misses the whole idea. And this is fundamentally about the reasons. The talk that Michelle referred to earlier, the governance program was about changes that are impacting us in this CFC power. And like many companies around the world, there is just an inordinate amount of change coming in. It's hugely disruptive influencing climate change, force utilization, throwing things upside down. We're seeing industry verticals break down all over the place. Companies that were once not even in our vast imaginings, competitors that now appearing on the competitive landscape. And it is just folly to imagine it can possibly deal with that level of change and disruption. If you've got a bunch of people sitting on your board or your management team or organization at large, that are all from the same background. So, the benefit of starting at the top, governance is going to be on this board. And we, to give an example of where we're at, but when I applied for the role as head of governance and head of the company, the board was what I would describe as volunteer and on the more senior side. And that's to say, you had a lot of people that have been around that same table for quite a long time. And so what we wanted to do to help manage business through this period of disruption that is probably going to go to end is to have a program of refresh. So we used a retirement guideline that began to trigger gradually opportunities to refresh the board. And once you create those opportunities, it's really important to just replace those retiring directors, essentially younger versions of themselves. And so we went around a very structured process of improvement to try and figure out first and foremost what sort of needs the organisation have to try and guide it through into the future, and then find people that have those characteristics for that contribution to the board. And a large element of that was to try and find people from those backgrounds. One element of that is gender. And I'm pleased to say that as of the 1st of January 2023, with some yesterday announced board changes to take place, we'll now reach close to 36% of the women.
That is a great name, 36%.
Yeah, 35.7 around there. Sure.
That's great, congratulations, that's very ambitious, I think probably better than a lot of listed companies. I said male and female on board. So may I invite Fern, I mean, you have been leading banking industry for a long time, and you even started the council launch for a bank you were with, and afterwards you sit at the boards of various NGOs and charities, their result. So whatever case you want to share, but I think instead of just hearing the achievement, also think about some of the challenges you face, and what's next for you. So we try to keep it louder because we have online audience a lot of them. So yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. So I've been working in this area since 2005. Some of you are probably teenagers at that time, but when I started, I didn't even know what D&I was, and so it's evolved so much over the years. And I got to start, which said D&I Council when I was at Standard Chartered. Obviously, that wasn't my day job, and got to work on a number of interesting things. And then later I joined community business as a CEO and basically full-time D&I and responsible business. So for me, over the years, I'm now retired, so I retired a couple of years ago. And I spend most of my time now volunteering on boards of a number of charities and advising a number of social enterprises and charities. And I work with C-suite leaders as well. So over those almost 2 decades, so much has evolved. And now we talk about D&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And back in the day, it was mainly multinationals having D&I on their corporate agenda. And a lot of that agenda was dictated by their head offices overseas. And most of the conversation was about women. A lot of the focus was on women, and now obviously much more broader, covering a lot of different areas. And when I was at community business, I'm really proud of the fact that we focused. There were a number of things that we worked on, but one of the areas that we decided to focus on was LGBTQ+ inclusion. And I was very, very much in creating the index that was sort of my baby and the awards. And I think that really helped to elevate the conversation from the corporate sector. And so nowadays you see not just MNCs really, caring about D&I, but also regional companies, local companies across industries. In the early days, it was mainly banks and financial institutions and also technology companies. Now it's across all industries. So that's good to see, but there's still deep-rooted issues. If you look at, for example, women on boards in Hong Kong, and this is an area that I worked on research for so many years, and seeing the numbers just sort of move millimeter by millimeter, snail's pace. And now today I think it's around 17%, but hopefully with the changes that have been introduced by Hong Kong Exchange and Clearing in terms of new listings and also new IPOs, by the end of 2024, I think, you cannot have a single gender board, for example, right? So those are steps in the right direction, but still it's hard work, so I would love to see that number go up to 30, 40, 50%. You can live where it should be. And Hong Kong is definitely like so there's good news, but there's also not too good news as well.
Well, thank you. We'd like to keep it authentic and real. So now it's time to Serena. If you can share a little bit about your current or past experience. I think many of us want to hear about, your passion, particularly for the group that we were speaking about and financial inclusion. You also brought up during our conversation about diversity of knowledge, which I think is so real to the point to many of us as well. So feel free to share. Yeah.
I think one thing that I do want to bring up is I was kind of looking around about diversity just a couple days ago. And one of the items really struck me. They say, if you want to serve the client right, shouldn't you structure your company in the same demographic as your client? You think about it. I mean, it's not just, race, it's also gender, it's also kind of technical expertise, education, language, what have you. In order to be serving your clients, you kind of need the perspective. You need to be able to kind of think in a way that that kind of resonate with them. That's one thing. And the other thing about diversity inclusion, I think inclusion to me is really important. I started off in an international organization, moving on to consumer finance, and now moving on to sustainable finance, including the diversity of statistics is one thing, and having the staff and having really the awareness of the inclusion, not being unfortunately biasing across different people. It's also kind of another thing, because if you kind of have to be genuine in your work, you can really be your true self at work. That's when you can really be productive. And that's kind of the corporate proposition as well, because you want your staff to be productive. You wanted them to be your true self. Now back to what we discussed about the technical diversity bit. Sustainability is a interesting new sector. moving up in, not just the financial industry sector, but also in other sectors as well. And to be able to kind of success or have an iterative great thought around how we can work with the client to structure something that really works for them, or in a way that we can help them to mitigate a climate risk, for example. We need the right technical experts to be doing so. So we don't need just financial knowledge, we don't need just bankers, we don't need accountants. Maybe we need, mathematicians, maybe we need physicians, maybe we need environmental scientists to be in those fields, to be able to provide the right level of expertise and advice to the clients. So that's kind of, for example, we were talking about the composition of the TBS sustainable finance team, and I was like, well, I'm really humbled because I'm sitting next to a PhD in engineering, so there's a lot of things I can learn from. So those are, I think, fundamentally how kind of corporate institutions can think about the hiring strategy or the team composition to look for something that would really kind of propel the business to another level, and kind of think about the disruption as well. With sustainability being a new agenda, can you, put your traditional mindset in kind of putting the team together, or you need somebody mindset person? I had a marketing person, a marketing expert on my team who just is thinking about sustainability in a totally different light. That is definitely something that I really want.
That's great. Now, I have, of course, a lot of planned questions, but I just now want to hear from the audience. How many do you think that your organization has an active or a good D&I policy? Quick one. Consciously working on in terms of hiring decision, looking into, I think one of the things we spoke about earlier is not to hire exactly the same type of people. How do we ensure that? So not just from the beginning in your hiring criteria, but in active hiring process, is there any, I'm just thinking about this, Fern probably would say, okay, should say that. Anyone really be checking to make sure all the candidates you choose and all that are within that scope? Because you're right, we spoke about, we tend to choose the people that are more like ourselves, so it's easy and all that. I'm also learning from that, and I think it's something that we learn. So how many of you say a lot, right? Honestly, candidly, because I just want to know, so I can give towards the conversation more towards me. All of you, just asking more pants. No, it's not thinking, about it. Because you have the policy, but how many are really experiencing it? Sure. Okay, yeah. So, okay,
Honestly, we don't say we want to hire a certain percentage of being gender or ethnic. It sense, but nowadays we don't look at people's picture. We don't look at their sexual habits. We don't ask. Very often in my industry, real estate, I end up with a lot more faces more visible than men. They are a lot more capable than when we look at the CV and the video, etc. But as we progress, as they progress, we start losing freedom. Start losing freedom. There must be something. Either we are not keeping them the right support, or the society is not giving them the right support, or the expectation of the society, the culture. So we need to be more. Although having said that, there's a lot of some very outstanding female leader in our country.
Yeah, so we had, you and I had the first call. I love that when you brought this up. So I posed that question with David when I had the call. I kind of make it lighthearted and I said, hey, what do you think about this? As in a lot of females being in the board, being the head of departments. But a lot of times when you go back to the top of the C-suite, you see the huge drop. Then I remember, the notes are here, and you mentioned something that is very important. It's about family, right? A lot of times, we have a lot of time, right? I used to live in Europe, and I see how the government give, let's say, paternity leave or paternity leave, right? For example, you give it 2 years. Father and mother share equally as you wish. I don't think most of the countries in Asia, or I mean, they have that. So we spoke about, is it a corporate responsibility or the setting overall? So what's your view on that? I think a lot of people want to hear this specifically.
Well, this is a really complex issue, and I think there's so many different factors at play, but one undoubtedly is the environment that corporations create for their staff. But one big barrier to them doing more, apart from societal pressures and norms, expectations, is that issue you talked about of parental leave that often, and I'm going to be honest, in CLP, parental leave is skewed heavily towards the mother, and there is paternity leave, but it's significantly less. Whereas in our Australian subsidiary, for instance, they have it's parental leave. It is able to be taken over a 2-year period, and it doesn't have to be taken in blocks. So it supports then the non-traditional caregiver, if you use that word, to take it, and say 2 days a week over the course of a 2-year period, as opposed to taking a month off or taking an all-in-one block. And that does play a part, both in terms of supporting choices for families, but then may be difference about enabling more people to stay in the workforce and continue on and upwards. And so that matters, and I think is important. But there's a whole other complex issues that go beyond the economy as well, around how societies norms apply, and that it varies, just as I've said, if you go to Australia or from because in the same company.
Right, now, I want to ask you this question. So we have seen a lot of MNCs and, big names that they are, they're at the thought leaders, they're at the front fighting, how they're supporting, and addressing stereotypes. So based on your experience, right, consulting or even with the bank with, any win cases and how this actually create a positive cycle in terms of culture, talent retention, and all that based on experience, and local use case, that you can share with us.
In terms of the benefits of D&I.
Yeah, or policies.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits. In fact, people Google, there's tons of research being done around the benefits of D&I by a number of organizations like McKinsey and so on. Some of the examples, today, we Kathy talked about the Great Resignation. And we know in Hong Kong that the workforce generally has been hit by immigration, leaving Hong Kong, so that's created a lot more turnover than you would normally expect. And so, so there's a huge war for talent, and young people, even going back years, millennials, are a lot more pickier about the kind of organization they want to join. They hold organizations accountable for issues like sustainability, ESG performance, D&I. And I remember, when I was head of HR, we were interviewing a lot of fresh grads. I wasn't always doing the interview, but with the international grads, I did meet them, and they would ask about, what are our policies, what are our commitments on both areas. So pretty astute, I would say, in terms of what they were looking for. And now, we know that talent they've got a lot of different opportunities. They're not going to be loyal to any one company. They will move around. And as you said, they will move even if they don't have another job, if they're not happy. And happiness means feeling a sense of belonging, feeling respected, valued, feeling they can contribute. One of the cases when early in my stint at community business, we were really gung-ho on increasing the number of women on boards. And at the time, I was talking to one of my ex-colleagues at Standard Chartered, Nick Samuel Smith, some of you might know, but at that time, he was chairman of the board at Maiden REIT. And when I talked to him, I says, we've got an all-male board, what gives? And he says, well, it never really occurred to me that we should have women on board. I think that's actually a good idea, given that we were they were embarking on this huge revitalization of the wet markets. So if you've gone to some of the main wet markets like Block Food, they're pretty nice compared to some of the older ones, you know, air conditioned and cleaner and so on. And so at that time, Nick, they decided to, I think they added 3 women over a couple of years. Eventually they had 4 women out of 10 within a couple of years. And she said to me, and later, Nick Allen, since he was vice chair, said to me that the conversation in the boardroom changed with women there, the dynamic changed. And we know that women, they're vocal, they're inquisitive, they will ask questions, they will not back down if you don't give them a good response. They take their roles very, very seriously. And yeah, so that was really good to see.
Yeah, that was great to know, and thank you. Now this question I have for KK, I think it's very important that this question to be asked. You know, in Hong Kong, there are a lot of property developers are locally owned, and they run business. So it's one of the questions. Okay, so you have to answer it. So what do you think we can do? You know, I'll say the word we because we don't want to take a point, but how can we as a society and community enhance and improve the culture? D&I is not just the buzzwords, but overall wellness, well-being, and other things that we spoke about earlier on the quality aspect. I mean, many people are here because they want to look at a figure like to give them guidance, and you're showing and demonstrating that doing this is the right thing for the business. So we're not getting a big point, but I think it's important to share with them that what you're doing and what you have been doing as a corporate has to be leading positive changes and outcomes. So I think it's good to hear from you directly to inspire them.
Well, no, we're not thinking about things, they are my comments. But to talking about, yes, I mean, in Hong Kong, really the real estate industry, in particular, on the investor side, is dominated by a few big lenders. And arguably, they are still extremely conservative. And I mean, they're all very successful for the good work they have done, but equally like that, I think there are a certain degree of monopoly. Okay. But therefore, some of them, they don't feel there's an urge to change from the current operation. And I mean, of course, some of them are getting old and they will be second generation coming up. And we hope the younger generation will be more receptive. But still in Hong Kong overall, this is still a very big issue. The equality, I mean, we said it, one thing we want to change. And I mean, yes, we talk about gender, the sense of purpose is etc. But in Hong Kong, I think it's very apparent against the equality of the society. I mean, we are like to think we are the privileged bunch. We are sitting here in the nice building, we will have nice glass of wine. You get nice summits and they could be nice wine. And we're very privileged. And we're talking about equality. People who we don't see and we don't encounter every day. They don't even have the luxury of talking about gender equality. And to Serena support, some of them, they don't even have a mobile banking account. So I think, I mean, this is not only the companies that we can be more aware of spending this money to address it.
Oh, thank you so much, and excited you brought this topic, which I wanted to ask Serena as well. I think you are very inspiring, not because we know each other, but that one conversation, I have to say, it really opens up my eyes. You're very young, and you are, and you said I'm not, again, I'm very careful with the D&I thing, but I'm just saying that I say it because you said you found your calling. So a lot of people, when they're at a certain level, the peak of many years, and they say, I found my calling because they had amassed a fortune, then they found their calling because they decide to move from physiological to security to self-actualization. Well, actually, there are very few ones that will start going from that self-actualization. So I want to hear from you, and I think there are people who are in the banking sector who should be, if they are not yet moved and think about there's a purpose behind it, especially many of us talk about sustainable finance, what is behind. So selfishly, I wanted to ask that you can talk a little bit about financial inclusion and digital inclusion specifically, because at the end of the day, digitalization are putting actually a group of people who are in a worse situation. So I'm just saying, I'm not from panic, so, but yeah, so that's why I let you share your thoughts.
Katie was mentioning about people who don't have a bank account. I think in that aspect, Hong Kong in general, citizens can consider themselves very fortunate that most of them have certain level of education, certain level of government support, and most of them, if not all of them, has a certain level of bank accounts. Couldn't believe in certain parts of the emerging markets, people don't have a bank account. They just don't. You can imagine how can they be included in a society like this. If you don't have a bank account, you cannot even buy your groceries online. What happens if COVID hits, right? And some of them cannot afford a loan for anything, for medical supplies, for something as simple as the smartphone. And thus they might not have access to the internet. So, I mean, not very much ideas had for a moment, but as I was thinking about a mission or purpose-driven type of career, it is. I think it's not just me. When I'm speaking to like some of my cohort of like graduates or some of the people that I work with, they do care about the impact that their work brings to society. So for me, when I saw the opportunity to work for a company that allows people to buy their first smartphone on 0% interest rates on installments where they otherwise could not afford, I went for it. And then I did not regret it. And that I think eventually that has a bit of connection to sustainable finance as well, because sustainable finance itself has a huge climate component in it. A lot of us were talking about we need to address climate risk, we need to address global warming, we need to treat our planet better. But at the same time, it is also about treating labor fairly, paying people the right wages, making sure there is right health and safety protocol in high-risk operations environments. These are all part of sustainable finance. And the topic that we're talking about today, D&I, is actually also ESG. So there are, I think eventually what I kind of noticed is, as we were speaking about it, financial inclusion and digital inclusion might not be directly, a business agenda for people, but it is nonetheless for me, a cornerstone of societal stability. You kind of have to be able to, support the overall population in order to achieve the right stability to Katie's point, take care of people who don't kind of see nice environments like this. Then business prosper. That's where economy prosper as well. So I mean that's where I see my personal calling is. But I think that's also kind of good to see sustainable finance or the topic of sustainability in general being more top of mind for executives. Because these are kind of the ways where important topics like this D&I, like financial inclusion, like taking care of the underprivileged, will find its way in the corporate business strategies and eventually, or for me as financial institution intermediary, right, finding ways to connect capital with corporates to achieve these goals in order to overall achieve a better outcome for everybody, both of the corporate and the society.
So can I leave in there as well, and at the risk of sounding like the boring guy in the suit. The topic here is one which often makes business people it really uncomfortable because then it's not clear why they should be doing this because it's social business that goes on business. And as well as to come back to that thing that I had right at the beginning, which is that this is not about this bigger interesting or feeling. It's actually about what is good for the business. And I think it's really important, as we go back to our own companies and have conversations with our own management about this, that you try and to be most convenient to bring it back to why it's actually good for your business. And the most powerful and the most rewarding and satisfying need is when you have that alignment between what is good for business and is also what is the right thing to do. And I just want to give an example, which just sort of joins some of the things that I've just been touching on. It comes out of our Indian business, and it's all about access to finance, social mobility, and the like. But it's a scheme that we've run in India in a community where we are building renewable energy systems. And we find it's true that besides Serena said, you cannot have sustainable business without a sustainable community. If you don't have a sustainable community, then you get all sorts of problems with businesses that you're trying to build. And so one of the things that we found a few years ago with the outbreak of COVID is that a lot of people in this community lost their job. Men were typically the income workers. And the women of that community had no financial literacy, little education, no idea about how you work and make income. And so one of the programs that our team in India ran was to run a financial literacy program for that group of women in that community, which involved also them having control of a sum of money that they could listen to the stories of their peers. They received the training about some financial literacy and how to open bank accounts and how to run businesses and the like. And they were then able to work out among each other who had the most use for the funds. And the stories that are profoundly moving and the changing of people's lives in that community that came out of that were absolutely fantastic. Because women who are now becoming breadwinners within their family when their husbands have lost their jobs. And the benefit that brought to the entire community on top of the immense benefit to them individually was fantastic to see. But of course, the benefit to us as a business as well was that you now had a much more sustainable community and had a much more harmonious community in which we were trying to do business. And that's what I mean about this topic. It is fundamentally about good business. And that's something to keep in mind.
Maybe you're so prepared, it seems like you know the question I was gonna ask, I was gonna exactly ask what COP is doing, because I mean, obviously like the director of the industry. So we're gonna continue, but okay, so we can have the food, then the wine start. And also please raise your hand if you have questions. We'll make it more look at if you get ready to see anyone, just ask questions. So okay. Wow, I'm gonna be shy, just raise your hand and we'll get ready. And also people online, if we have any questions online, I mean if you do, then please share and then we can start opening the floor. Do we have any questions now? Then you can just hijack, otherwise we'll just continue. Okay, so actually I have one question. I said that's not be control on us. Yes, so Fern, I mean based on experience. I'm just thinking out loud, maybe said all these things right there. Of course, they're always very leaders are minority, right? They're always followers that are 80-90%. So let's just say after the talk, or they feel, okay, I want to do something. Now they bring me to the board, or let's just say they are the boss already, but they still need to go to the big boss and say, I want to do something, I want to fight with the D&I, whatever it is. Like it could be financial inclusion, or maybe other, maybe just basic D&I policies and all that. Usually, I mean, you're gonna share the blind spot, but I think the blind spot will be, it's immediately in short term, it will be a cost, right? Even for example, mental health, special needs, these other things in short term, is going to be a cost, right? That means I have to insure people who have to see psychiatrists. That means I have to change from my understanding, KK is not from you, but I understand from Marita that you actually did some changes to have the building to make it accessible to the people with special needs. So immediately, unless the boss has the heart and say, okay, I will spend a budget. But otherwise, if you have to tell your C-level, they say, there's gonna be more money, well, I mean, of course you can share, but, let's just say immediately there are people who want to ask, I want to endorse it, so how can these leaders be more bold and not think, I'm not thinking for the business, I'm actually thinking for bigger group. In fact, I mean, I had experience in previous, employers, and I was asked that question, and that's why a lot of things I dare not ask because I'm gonna be silent. And I will be put in a position that I'm not thinking about the business. So how can we address that?
Okay, so a lot of these costs actually investments. You need to invest in people, you need to invest in infrastructure. Now, if you think of, something that you need to do to a process to make it more effective in attracting diverse candidates or to remove biases from something, you don't need to think too much about that because this is probably going to pay off. If you look at it from an investment perspective, it will definitely pay off, right? But, if you're thinking, oh God, it's going to cost money, we don't have budget, we don't have resources, we're so busy, then you're never going to do anything. And D&I, that is a journey, right? You can start small, or you can, learn, see the benefits, and do more. So, when anyone said cost, there's a lot of things that are cost, but it's like any leader, any business leader, you need to think about how you want to spend that money.
But then the boss will ask, what about the ROI? What's the return on that investment?
Yeah, so ROI depends on how you want to measure that, right? How do you measure an inclusive workplace, culture? How do you measure probably attrition, lower attrition, attraction of candidates? I mean, those are some KPIs that you can measure. I think, success is not, straightforward, like black and white. It's about it's about also how we achieve those abundance.
Thank you, you want to share something?
Right, I was going to say exactly what I was saying is investment. And if a company is not prepared to invest into their business, how they get public, and from my experience, this is definitely and it's not even a hockey stick investment. You see the return, but it's tangible or intangible, and you see the return free.
Yeah, when you talk about hiring people with disabilities, those workplace accommodations don't actually cost a lot of money. Okay, so they're actually quite easy, especially if, the buildings today and how they're fitted out already in terms of, what they're doing as a standard. I remember when I was at the bank and, it was obviously in the Olympics, I was in London, it was at 2008, wasn't it? Or 2012, right? And so there were, so I thought it might be good to see if there were any kind of retiring pyramid athletes that hired, that were maybe competing in the last pyramid pits and were looking for employment. So we were able to recruit a couple of them. We identified them and some of my colleagues said, oh God, like one's in a wheelchair, we're gonna have to make lots of accommodations and all that. And I said, listen, Kevin, he actually won, I think he won a silver medal in Asian Games in table tennis. I think he can move around pretty well. And I don't think you're gonna have problems, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, they came in to these two guys and they changed mindsets in terms of, abilities.
It's the mindset, it's where you and I certainly is a sensation. And I remember there was once I met one girl, she's on a wheelchair, but she loves him. And she recalled when she was young, people did not want to include her in the choir. And so because they felt it's really convenient to remember, you to rely on the chair. But in reality, you in the choir, you look for someone who can sing, not for someone who about their mobility. So that bias.
You know, one thing I remember was in my previous work, I had worked with an intern who is visually challenged. And working in the industry where you need to see people a lot, doing a lot of presentations, reply to emails, through that fall up. That would have been challenging, right? But totally that was minimal accommodations made. You had existing technologies that's available. You know, you just kind of open your eyes and it's all there. You can read through. You have OCR to read through your PDFs. You don't really need to like do a lot of accommodations that are visually challenged in terms of very well. I'm saying so these are the things that, as the LCs were looking to is mindset changing. When you first of all have to make the first step personally, then you can do the change. So there are actually in organizations in Hong Kong that have been proposed, like various types of disabled kind of recruiting as well. Yeah.
And this whole conversation reminds me of the Oscar Wilde quote. Where it was said it is best to see the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And one of the things that I think in this space, the direct cost, as the speakers have said, is often quite low. And very little value is ascribed to the intangible benefit that you get from it. And yet, seemingly, a lot of the value was put on the intangible costs associated with doing these sorts of things. And I think it comes back to that sort of constant need to challenge people about bias in terms of conscious or subconscious bias, because that does colour a lot of thinking about what are the costs of various investments.
I want to share a use case. When I was in Singapore, I was working in advertising. We were SME with just 10 people. In my creative team, I was managing designer, marketers, sales, and copywriter. My copywriter had autism. He doesn't really talk, but he write award-winning copies. And then graphic designer who's a chair. So I think I somehow feel that I was in Singapore for 5 years, and I felt that this kind of dynamic, inclusive environment seems to be more accepted. No one had a question, but back in Hong Kong, actually, people instead of saying why not, they ask why, which is fundamentally the mindset issue. Because in Singapore, when I was there, I mean, any SME would hire people like that, pay exactly the same grade, give a lot of respect and treat them, and find the talents that the commitment of work and the attitudes, I wouldn't say way better, but necessarily, but they genuinely, majority, they are super good, humble, dedicated. So I remember I spoke with one of the large, big businessmen here, and I asked, why is it? Because I know he's hiring a lot of disabled people in China. He asked very specifically what business sense. You know, in mainland China, we got tax deduction to hire people with disability. Here, no. So I think, isn't it because of setting issue? If that has to be it, then we can spend hours talking about our vision and mindset, or should we go straight to, of course, I mean, I would want to be just thinking about the best way to handle it, because a lot of times for business people, they look at the rebates, they look at the immediate benefits. I'm just thinking of the balance. So this is a question that I didn't include. So I mean, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to answer, but just sort of throw it, just a stretch a bit, because I can smell the line. So yeah, just to get it. I mean, if you feel comfortable to answer, please.
I mean, I'm happy to weigh in on that. Because, to me, it's all part of the mindset of managing business. Is it short-term, immediate, next quarter profits, or is this something that you're managing for the longer term? If you've got a longer-term horizon, you'll do a lot of things that you wouldn't do if you're just worried about the next quarter or the next year of results. So you wouldn't make that investment in the small incremental costs, because it'll impact the results immediately. but the benefit will be derived over the longer term. But the sustainability is a mindset, and I think D&I is a critical element of every sustainable business has to be looked at over the long run. Because if you're not paying attention to these factors, they are the sorts of things that will come back and really bite you.
One thing I wanted to just kind of throw it out there is from the financial institution angle, that there are a lot of from asset managers or from kind of industry practitioners, we continuously do something called engagement. We just wanted to kind of go to the corporates and ask what are you doing with your board, what you're doing with your management, you know. These kind of what is now typically for ESG disclosures are getting more and more important and going to influence investment decisions. So hopefully one of the important factors will be when you're doing good or not will implicitly drive capital flow. And then that will also provide another layer of incentives for, you know, hopefully corporates to put more attention or put more resources into important topics like this.
I know all this, and the totally sorry. I wish we could have a lot more research, a lot more data to prove that. And also people will have to be honest with their data as well. Because very often you slice and dice all the data and make sure that it looks good. And we all have to be very honest.
I think also more and more, if you're bidding for business, you need to demonstrate commitment to some of these things, right? So as a vendor now, you go on and you know respond to like a vendor questionnaire. You have to talk about your history work, your KPIs and all that. And I know that some of the big banks, when they are evaluating the relationships with the law firms and accounting firms in their request for proposal or request for information, they ask whether, you know, how you're doing on this index, you know, whether you're doing anything in this area and so on. So in order to get the business, you need to demonstrate commitment.
That's great. Well, thank you. Any questions from the floor? Yes.
Let me start.
Yeah.
Hi.
Well, I can hear.
Hi, it's Jonathan. So, I mean, as for D&I, what I mean, some people suggest that companies should leverage employee responsibility for D&I, because the employee responsibility can provide the best advice to the company on how to support people with disabilities or entrepreneurship or LGBT in terms of employee well-being, accommodating measures of work, and even trying to create all the strategy for people say with disability, you know, people who are likely to be marginalized by the society.
So yeah, I can talk about employee resource groups or employee networks. There are a lot in companies, and some of them start for different reasons. Some of them are started by employees themselves. Some of them are driven, you know, top down, but they do provide a channel for like-minded employees to get together, share experiences, get support, and so on. And there's a lot of synergies you can gain from the different ERG working together as well. So when I was at Standard Chartered, we started an ERG for LGBT group, also a women's network, and also parents and caregivers. And we did a number of events where they worked together. So, for example, one of the first events we had was a panel, much like this, but it was around people. I think most of them were guys, gay men, talking about their coming out story. And some of them had one of them brought their mom with them and so on. It was very, very touching. But that was, you know, co-sponsored by the parents and caregivers group and also the LGBT network. So I think it definitely is, I say it's a very good practice, but some companies aren't big enough to be able to sustain a number of employee networks. So for example, in the legals, there's HK Data, Hong Kong investment attorneys network. So a lot of the law firms are not very big. Some of them are huge and they have their own network, but so there's these networks that are cross industry. The other one is the interbank network as well. So and that enables these companies also to share knowledge, experience, and so on.
Great, we're Steven.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the conversations on the day too. So I'm Stevens and I work for a big agency that look after learning development. So your comments heard about how law firms operate and some of the demands of the space really resonated with me. I guess I'm listening, what it is that I was thinking about is a lot of D&I is about changing the status quo, making incremental or sometimes big leap changes all the time. And we started talking a little bit about the ROI, the investment, how you justify investing. So I actually wanted to go to the other end of the spectrum, which will be innovation. From an innovation perspective, my question is, if you have a magic wand on how you can change the world, it's very fairly typical kind of question, but what I want to understand is, what would you like to see? Maybe it's things that are not being, that sort of stuff. But behind that question, it's something I actually just read this morning and I've tasted before, which talks about how do you address the issue of the talent gap or talent issues that's happening all over the world at the moment. And wondering how we to make the opening remarks, learning about the great investigation. And part of that article talked about an example of a company having a law that they've been with before for over a year. I'm going to say both, by the way, I have some open decisions I'm going to do for and find right against it. But what they did was, one day they just said, we're just going to break that job into multiple jobs, the job share. It could be 3 hours, it could be 2 days a week, it can be multiple skill sets, different people, different backgrounds, who all these resumes that are coming in. They started really hitting where I'm going, and they were seeing the benefits, not just from a productivity perspective, but also from a D&I perspective. So I wanted to understand how innovation fits into this whole mix, and it's always sort of like going on time.
That's a really good question. And part of the role that I have in strategy is to look after our corporate venture capital activities, which is all about innovation. And just one thing that is obvious to me, so there is no country, area, region has a mortgage on talent. And so if you're already looking in one area, you're not going to succeed from an innovation standpoint. Equally, I think what's been obvious from the COVID years, where people were not traveling, is that I think the level of tolerance, openness, acceptance, and frankly innovation suffered. And one thing that I've really, it's been fantastic. I've traveled a lot in the last year. And getting back out and seeing the benefit that you get from face-to-face interaction with people with different backgrounds, who come from different perspectives, who have had different experiences over the last couple of years, and what that does in terms of the quality and level of discussion, interaction, and then the energy and ideas that flow from that is amazing. And I think we've suffered a lot over the last 3 years of not having had that. And, it's not a silver bullet, but I think encouraging people to actually get beyond their cave and get out there and be open-minded. So I fundamentally think human beings I'm not an optimist, but I think once given the exposure, people generally want to do the right thing and want to improve their lives and those around them. And so that's creating juice that flows from that kind of interactions is so powerful.
Okay, and I want to write on this question. Can you maintain the optimism and the skilled people, especially who's retired?
Look, sometimes it's a challenge. I mean, I'm not here to say that everything's rosy and that we always get our own way in advocating for things that we would like to change. But I think that's I hate the expression, but people have mentioned it many times, so I'm going to say it again. It is a journey. You cannot hope to change mindsets, beliefs, behaviors that have been entrenched over decades or longer overnight. And I think the most important thing from a sustainability perspective, and D&I is a critical aspect of that, as I said, is persistence, grit, determination to stay the course, knowing that we're not going to achieve everything that we believe is possible straight away, but having the confidence that people want to believe that if you stick at it, change will happen.
I like the idea. Jonathan.
Stephen.
Steve, sorry, we said in grants, the Republic grants, I really like it. For that creativity. And as an employee, we need to look at the creativity seriously. And if you mentioned one can break down a certain job into various segments, and you enable people from different different geographic areas and different races, etc., to participate. And I think that's a fantastic idea. And we nowadays work on the work-life balance. I think we are ready for that.
I would agree, and I think that's a really good example. But in terms of being able to attract people, there's a lot of biases, unconscious biases in the entire sort of recruitment process, right? From the time you start to go out and, well, first of all, writing the JD and doing it in a way that you look at all the requirements and see, do we really need this requirement for this job, or is it just traditional that it's been there? So really taking a critical look at the JD and the way the job is described, and then looking at different ways to make the job or timeshare, whatever, but also looking at how you're reaching out, what channels are you reaching out to try, are they as diverse as they could be? And then looking at each step of your, is it called your hiring funnel? Whether there are biases that are preventing good candidates from coming through. So when way back when I was in banking, I'm sure you guys have probably heard this expression. We used to say, we hire the best and the brightest. Okay, and what that meant in our context was Ivy League school graduate, right? So, and back in those days, we didn't have technology to go through the CVs, but you had somebody looking at the CVs, the physical CVs. I think they're probably on paper at the time and saying, okay, Harvard, no, okay, so rejection. And then so then you're probably neglecting some really, really good people just because of that criteria. And it was probably somebody quite low down in the chain that was making that decision. Yeah, you really do need to look at every step and try to minimize any kind of biases. So nowadays we're helped by technology, but still some things can get in the way. For example, your recruitment panel, is it diverse? Do you ask the same questions to every candidate to ensure that you're as objective as possible, to have some kind of scoring system. And then back in the day, I remember some hiring managers, very senior people would say, I want to hire this person. They're a mini, right? They just look, I just see myself in that person, hire that person. And those days, definitely should be gone. But also, as an HR person, you should be talking to that leader and asking them, okay, tell me why you want to hire that person and not that person. So make sure, hold them accountable for that hiring decision, right? So there are a lot of things that you can do just in that hiring process to make it as inclusive as possible.
This is a great point, because as hiring manager, being able to point out was something that I benefited myself as well, because sometimes we have our stigma and think that's the right thing. So, thank you. Any questions?
My name is Anthony. It's not a question, but it's more like I actually did the research on employment with disability. And I would like to provide some data points towards the topic of accommodation cost and ROI. Okay, so accommodation cost is a misperception because people look at accommodation as an absolute cost. but it's actually should be taken as a brand cost. Because everyone asks for accommodation, like, and no employees or other employees, they ask for special desk, special chairs, special freedom, optical house, special volume. But it's invisible. But the cost for the application for the people with disabilities are quite visible. And then people look at it as an absolute. In fact, there are many studies showing that accommodation costs very many. Okay? And second, ROI. So there are so many studies already proving that people with disability they have lower birth weight retention. They stay longer, they work harder, they have some enhanced strength because of their limitations. Okay? And also one very important point is we forget that in fact this group of disability as a term, even according to the Hong Kong government's definition, there are 9 types. Okay, including physical, sensory, intellectual, mental, and it's overly generalized. So we are having a bunch of like 500,000 people with higher education. Okay, they may just have some limitation in their mobility, or like maybe they have some impairment in their vision, their hearing, that can easily be accommodated by technology. Okay, but we just generalize them into one group of people with disability and feel that okay, we are talking about someone we need to have bigger office ballroom, different facility, everything for every single person with disability. That's wrong. So in my research with 108 subjects, I surveyed 108 arrest supervisors who were really managing at least one person with disability at that study. 75% of them said that they were satisfied with the performance of their subordinate with disabilities. And close to 60% even said that they are making extra contribution to the team, to the organization. Unfortunately, around 3/4 of employees were willing to try to work with people with disability, but only 70% of employers were willing. So the numbers tell you where we need to address. Thank you.
It must be Anthony, right? Yeah, so I mean, I read your work and your son's great. He should be sitting here instead of but no, I mean, Anthony is academia, I would say that your study, your research has I think is a great and very awakening data that is proven the right data to show why is it so important to include them. It's not nice, we're not doing a favor to include them. We're actually privileged and we drive business performance, which is actually one of my questions about, I think the reason why we need to set the stage and set the scene right is because D&I, a lot of companies feel like we're doing a charity work to do it. It's not a charity work, it's a us. So that's why we have to say it has to be a corporate agenda. So I just want to check any questions from the online. Yes? Okay. You can just speak on the mic. Yeah, there's a question from online. And if your company has a preferred list of university people, how do you work on or with that into implement D&I? Because a preferred list is somehow not fully in line with diversity. And the people are curious what trainings do your companies provide to managers to really reflect the company's initiative and carry that in their day-to-day actions and conversations. Oh, very good one.
For one, we don't have a preferred list. And although we still got a lot to do, but we have come a long way. I remember when I was first interviewed by the managing director of Hong Kong for a job. That was about 150 years ago. And the question was, did you play rugby? And the second one was, did you break? So, and that's one of the criteria, Senator Michelle Mak, I think, yes, criteria. And you really have come along. Maybe we don't do that. I mean, we don't have in those days, we will look for people who are charter surveyors or have the aspiration of becoming charter surveyors. But if you blame it nowadays, I mean, we know that our jobs not our language, our jobs not our measuring beforehand. We need people from people background, people from basically from all sorts of backgrounds who enable the company to thrive. And therefore, we a good team of youngsters to start with. And then we then from the top as well. We encourage people to have a discussion on whether to now diversity. We encourage them, and we want them to give a suggestion, and we want them to plan that as well.
So it's address that first question about this preferred list of universities. I think a lot of companies do that. I would question, first of all, what's behind that list? What are the criteria behind creating that list? And whether or not whoever is in charge of that in the recruitment area, whether they realize that that could undermine diversity. And it could, it does introduce bias. So they need to take some D&I training.
Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the conversation. It's very interesting. My name is Emily. So I have a question. What advice would you give younger people who, like myself, who don't even belong in the boardroom, but I do feel strongly about these issues? I remember when I was in college, I watched this speech by Hillary Clinton in Beijing and Emma Watson in the United Nations. They talk about gender equality, and a lot of those issues that we discussed almost 10 years ago are still kind of not addressed today. And for someone like myself and my friends, we are still relatively young in the workforce. A lot of issues we feel strong, for example, D&I or gender equality. So what advice, which some of you are more senior or industry leaders who are very successful, what advice would you give to young people that they want to burn it out and they don't want to be put like, this is a child issue, this is not important. So what advice would you get for young people who want to raise this issue? Thanks.
So first of all, I would say that your views belong in the boardroom. Age shouldn't be a determinant as to whether or not you belong in the boardroom. And companies, boards need to create diverse boards. It shouldn't be what they call these called the pale, stale, and male.
Not corporation, section to teach them, so how do you get people here because it's that's a whole topic.
But nowadays, leaders know that they need to be accessible to their employees. They need to go out and talk to people, whatever. And hopefully there are avenues in the organization where you can talk to top management. And you can suggest, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should consider this, but I would say don't be afraid to have a voice. And top leaders need to listen to diverse views from every area of organization.
Well, I was in the boardroom until very recently, and I joined the boardroom for a charity. So full disclosure that I started off volunteering for diversity meetings. I started off volunteering in organizations that advocate these things. Nowadays, it's a lot easier than when it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, when you don't have something like social media. Maybe you also don't have things like SharePoint blogs where come down. Nowadays, management probably run these things to kind of solicit ideas. So for you to get your voice heard is a lot easier than when it was a while ago already. That would be my personal observation. Now, secondly is as Fern was alluding to, your voice does matter. What I think it will be useful to do is how do you make your voice more heard in a way that's productive? Will be, for example, like I said, volunteering organizations, find advocates, find your fellows, and advocate for the agenda that is most close to your hearts. And if it's diversity hiring for you, then it's diversity hiring for you. If it's for example, for financial inclusion, that is financial inclusion, it can be many things. But now and make sure you constantly vocally talk about these things in all the channels that you have available, because not eventually, I think once you have mentioned it repeatedly, loud enough, they do get heard.
I think there's some great points, especially the volunteering part. Even within your organization, you can volunteer to do something. I like a lot of these roles, like, ERG lead or whatever, some of them are decided top down, but if you express that you're interested to start an ERG or to do this, hopefully somebody will say, oh, yeah, I like that young energy that you bring, and, invite you in.
Yeah, Emily, I just want to say I really admire your passion, and I'm sure on the floor right away you get allies, and I'm definitely happy to speak with you. I'm sure there are a lot of people who sit here who would like to speak with you, to talk to you about it. And I just want to say one of the example of the chance I get to reach out to KK was on social media, was LinkedIn. I saw the post that he was doing lunch and learn at JL, and I actually Googled things, I don't Google, but I read through the post. I do due diligence on Sensational Foundation, and then I reach out to Sensational Foundation, the founder, then I get to KK. So I think the other thing is how much you want something. It's about conviction. Everybody can say they have passion. Allow me, I hijack one second again, but passion, if it's not tested, is so shallow, it's not real. It's just like everybody can talk about the tree, but they don't work on it. Only with perseverance, that is your calling, but it becomes a conviction. Then when you walk out, there is a vibe, there's an energy. People will be drawn to you. Just like you just raised this point, I'm sure people will offer you a hand. I think it's so important to offer support to people who dare you to raise a hand. Even when I was in Hong Kong, I never raised my hand and asked questions. When I was on exchange to UT Austin, the whole class just focused not even asking a question. Why is everyone raising their hand? Just let me listen. Then I feel bad of not raising my hand. I feel so bad that I was left. I had to start thinking of questions. So what I'm saying is, it's great that you asked this question, and I really think there are so many managers and business leaders who are in not just physically here, but they're also dining, virtually. I think it's important to really keep on actively opening up space. In D&B, we have this My Idea where it's anonymous. You just write to My Idea D&B.com. So we can, I have raised so many things anonymously, and it has been heard. So I think, and my team is also very choosing as well. So I think it's extremely important for companies to provide channels like that some can talk about ideas, comments anonymously. Of course, at the end of the day, you be held accountable, right? So, anything to it?
I just wanted to make a slightly flippant remark, which is we should remind ourselves that unconscious bias exists in all people, and echoing what Fern and Serena have said about speaking up. Don't just assume that the person in the management suite will listen to you or doesn't care about what you have to say. Because again, come back to that fundamental thing. I do think most people try and do the right thing, and oftentimes they're just not aware. And it's you speaking up gives them a data point to be more aware, at least to be thinking about those things that they may not otherwise have been conscious of.
John?
Actually, the question's been answered to an extent, but David and Fern touched on, Sweet already touched on the concept of unconscious bias, and leaders with pleasant intentions ask the subject of that, and that's one of the probably the biggest fears that lives in the room. What are some additional examples, modern day examples of how we can overcome, how we can be more conscious of unconscious bias?
Can I just weigh in quickly on that? We didn't answer one of the second question from online as well about training, but I think this is probably one area where training programs are most powerfully targeted in the recruitment process. To make sure that if you're using a recruitment firm, that the recruitment firm have mechanisms in place to deal with those who are doing the search but they're not unconsciously biased in the pool of the candidates they present. And then the panel who's doing the interview or selection within the company is equally given the tools and the training to make sure that they're at least aware of these issues and there are processes. The Fern would be much better place to speak to than I to guard against that. But I think that's probably in the recruitment area is probably where it's most powerfully focused.
Yeah, I think it's not just leaders that have unconscious bias. Every one of us, it's part of our human nature. You know, it's because we have information overflow. There's, you know, things that we're processing and our brains can only process about 40 things at a time. So we categorize and stereotype. You know, we have these biases, so it's natural. So I find that training really helps to really understand the types of bias that could exist and, you know, really checking yourself. Like once you have that training, you become much more self-aware. It still happens, but I always find, you know, working in this space, friends call each other out in a nice way. Say, oh, I think it's your unconscious bias about, you know, this coming through. So first of all, the awareness is really, really important. And then saying to your team members, you know, if I do this, or if I demonstrate, you know, bias or whatever, please tell me. I mean, I'm not perfect. Please give feedback.
And some debating and information, you know, maybe some of the researchers and you're conducting it's very helpful to help people understand these discrepancies.
So if I could share, you know, so mainly leadership has there are two main kinds of misconception or bias. The first thing is they feel that people with disability are less ethical, less reliable, okay, and they feel that the CMS can control. Okay, that they will tell you. The other half and the more, I would say, like severe problem is they won't tell you. But the example for Chinese, traditional Chinese belief is disability is a kind of punishment from the heaven for wrongdoing in the last life. Okay, if you don't trust me, you can ask your father, your parents, or any traditional Chinese, they will not tell you. Okay, the deep down is there. So awareness is not only observed, but deep down we ask ourselves, why do we have hesitation to work with or to employ people with disability? Unfortunately. Okay.
Great insight. Yeah. So, any other questions? If not, then we can continue at the back. We have wine and catering. People online, feel free to have a drink. I'm sure probably just the consumers to have you. So any other comments or remarks that you would like to say? Okay. Last call to action, what would it be?
Thank you.
Yeah, so you have 10 seconds for call to action. Yes. If you have, because I mean, we said we're here for purpose. So allow me to say that we don't just want this as an, there has to be an action afterwards. That's why I was sharing because I don't want it to be just like that and that's it. This year, how are you going to bring this conversation or insight to your job and make an impact? I think Katie said something. We are already very privileged to be here to enjoy whatever when people are suffering and don't even have the energy. It's not just about being able to pay more. It's not even having the assets. So I'm really making it like a strong call. I started with our call to actions. So anyway, I just wanted to say that you are here for a reason. If you don't feel interested, you wouldn't even have been here, or just because I read it here probably. But yeah, I just think that your time not wasted. So.
Anyone, so yeah, I'll make the call to action. In fact, there was a question you were supposed to ask me, which you didn't have time, so that my call. So be an ally. So I think it's really, really important to be an ally. That means not a passive ally, not somebody that just supports something, but really be intentional, be visible, do stuff, especially if you're at a senior level you have access, you have privilege, you have access to resources, you have influence, but you can really affect change for your organization, several times. There's so much you can do.
Can I add to that? I mean, we've spoken about how Michelle found a lot of us on social media. But I think the thing that we should bear in mind is that the algorithms point us down a particular path, which is not very diverse or inclusive of it. And I think the call to action I would give to everyone, myself included, is to be aware of that and to try and avoid getting sucked down the rabbit hole. So you are constantly seeking sources of information outside of your regular channels.
We talk about unconscious bias and agriculture, etc. I think the conversation should start with us. Whenever you're having drinks with friends or a party or whatever, just bring this conversation up. We all have a responsibility.
Just treat your colleagues in an inclusive manner if you can, now that you're more aware. And if there's something that you are looking up after this session, look up financial inclusion, digital inclusion, because I'm sure a lot of people in this room can definitely help to make a difference wherever you are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I could mix it.